Hi, Matt.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you? We were just discussing a story of one of our friends, Adam Bartholomew, shared today out of Mount Nebo Middle School. A number of children walked out in protest of furries being allowed to distract their classes, attacking kids with biting, scratching, and spraying of chemicals in their faces.
I heard about this actually quite sad and disappointing.
Right. How does this happen? Like, is this where teachers and administrators just decide, look, we don't want to get involved, and it just kind of grows through social acceptance?
No, you've got to ask, how does this happen? Did mom and dad check out in life and decide to allow their kids to, I don't know. Is it a mental thing? Like they think they're an animal, or is it just a new style trend?
Well, regardless of what it is, one thing that should be made clear is that in our public education, we educate children, kids, not animals, right? And so I don't accommodate, not in my school anyway, and nor should happen in any school. I don't accommodate animals in the school and in the classroom. So it's somebody asked me this question earlier today. They said, hey, where did we get? I mean, we are Utah. We have Utah values. How did we get here?
Yeah.
And I don't know where, it seems like it just happened so fast. And let's be honest, Utahns are kind people. We're just kind people. And so I see what happened is sometimes people have been able to just push and push. And the next thing you know, we're having this problem. And it's like, why did we let it get this far?
Yeah.
Now, you talk about, well, is this acceptable or is this where we are now? Well, it should never be acceptable that we could say, well, if you're a furry, if you fall inside this box, then you can spray chemicals on somebody. I don't even care if it's water. You don't get to do that. Right?
Yeah, that's assault.
It's assault because you don't know what it is.
So why are we saying, well, because they check this box, it's okay? It's not okay.
What's that famous TV show Dog Trainer?
Dog Whisperer.
Yeah, it's Caesar something or another.
But listen, I would like to give him a proper introduction. Yeah. So full disclosure, Matt, you are the principal of the school that my children have attended since kindergarten. And I have said this in every interview I've had with the school board members, is that I'm a very proud parent of my children. I chose the school on purpose for the values of the 7 habits of highly successful people. I think it teaches, individuality, personal responsibility, and accountability. It teaches, you control your own destiny, it teaches manners. You talk about do unto others as you have done to yourself. And it's got a really important part, which I notice some other schools don't have, and it's history focused at even a very young age. My child learned about the Emancipation Proclamation in kindergarten. Both kids did. And I think that's phenomenal. And it was taught so well and classy, I should say. So this is the principal of Excelsior Academy and our incumbent. This is Mr. Matt Hymas, and you've been on the show before.
Yeah, and before you go there, I want to address what you just said here, because this is important. One of the things that has been happening since the early years of Excelsior Academy is the Veterans Day Assembly. Mm-hmm. Every year, we take a chunk of time out of the education schedule, of the learning schedule, and we invite veterans from all over the county and even beyond. We tell kids, invite your parents, grandparents, and then we send out invites, because we believe, one, in America, and we believe in those who have fought and signed up to fight and sometimes die for our country. And so every year we honor those veterans, and they come in and we have a veteran speaker. And I don't know, Holly, if you've ever been able to attend one or not.
Every single one. In fact, my stepfather is a veteran. You have his picture on the wall, and my late father, is also a Vietnam veteran. And so we would go every year. In fact, I think this last year is the first year we missed it because my stepfather wasn't feeling good. but that is one of the greatest assemblies that I've ever been to. And it is, the kids love it. All the kids get engaged. And I think the veterans love it. I mean, Mr. Marston's father's a veteran, and he even spoke, who's the principal of the junior high.
Yeah, he spoke a couple
really
years
moving.
ago. Yeah, my father came and spoke. I invited him this last year, and he did a great job. A Marine Corps vet, and
Oh, wow.
and just anyway, just a special moment, and just recognizing. And this goes along with my philosophy, and this is why I stop you here, is because we feel that it's important. We feel it's important for kids of all ages, whether they're in public education or not, kindergarten or younger, all the way up through 12th grade. And if we had a high school, we would do it in the high school as well. But it's important for them to see and visit with, and we ask our veterans to go visit classes, talk to these kids. It's that important to take time to have that experience. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good. It's good you start them off young on a right foot.
Well, it teaches them pride in where they're from and what the possibilities are. And it teaches them love of their country and appreciation for the sacrifice. I mean, the assembly, if you haven't been to one, you're a veteran. And I think you would really enjoy it because it's so touching. And then the kids will take their grandparents to their classroom or their dad or mom. And then the classroom gets to ask questions. And I've heard the funniest questions as my kids have gotten older in their classes. And my stepfather enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah. And Jared, you don't look like a crier, but I think we might be able to get a tear out of it.
Yeah.
It gets pretty emotional.
Good.
So,
Good.
Matt, I'm excited for a few things. One is that, out of all the candidates in the races, you're actually, you're in a school, and your job and your success depends on the very standards that board brings down. And I think that's important. I think that's really important. And I want people to understand that, like, when you can say what you want to do and it's great, but now you've been there. Now you know how things work. It was your first term this last time, correct?
Yep. Yes.
So now you're there. You're at an elementary school that you put your own children in, and you've established standards. And this school already had great standards. I mean, I loved the school even before you got there. But then when you got there, it got even better. So I see that you implement these standards in your daily practice. And I know because it affects my children, it affects your own children. So I think that is something that people should really know about you, is that you are living the practice. You're walking the walk, and you're not just a board member, you're a principal, administrator of a charter school. And I'm hoping that with someone like you, that with what you've done at Excelsior, I'm hoping that you could help improve other charters and make them up to that standard, because I think it's charters that are starting to really shine, right?
We've seen huge growth in charters, but not only are we trying to help other charters, and when I say we, I mean, I personally am trying to help other charters and say, hey, here's a way to do it that will educate children. Right. And there's different methods, of course, we know that. But we found here at Excelsior with my philosophy, and I've tried to implement this at the state level as well, is that when we make parents partners, it has huge dividends, right? And the state level is a little bit different, right? I don't here I can call a student's parent or have a parent come in and work with us. At the state level, I get to visit with parents and gain perspective and understanding, and then take that back for votes or for even policy changes. But understanding that parents, that it's you and I and our neighbors and our friends who really know their kids best and want to help their kids, that's where we can really focus on educating students. I have never met a parent who is not interested in their child's education. And I heard when I first started teaching, it was like, these parents don't care. You're on your own. That's not true. And the heartbreaking thing is I see other schools, including district schools, that they're either not reaching out to parents or they're not demanding the support from parents. And I think when I got here, that was one of the things that we changed, was we said, make sure that parents are involved in all aspects, right? We tried to give them more information quicker on their child when they could see a difference in their grade level. And Holly, you might get frustrated with the amount of things coming in, but
I know when my son has been tardy to his 5th period, right at the moment he's been marked tardy. I know when my son has an assignment missing before he's even home from school. So I have a conversation starter right there in the car.
Well, she's already taken away his iPad. So yeah.
well, we need to focus on things of that nature, right? These kids have to be prepared to run schools or organizations, to hold meetings like this. And putting a phone or a screen in front of them is not the answer, right? There's work to be done, and we need to do it.
Now, I was at a meeting with a candidate for this last night, and she mentioned that our districts are throwing screens in front of kids all day long, and they're teaching off of Chromebooks. I don't find that
they are. I can attest.
And so we've talked about this, and I also got this perspective from another lady that said, well, charters tend to be for parents who can actually drive their child, because most charters are commuter schools. So you're going to get a different type of child or a different class of family. And I can understand that. But at our school, I see all types of kids, and there's carpool groups and everything else. But I'm wondering why. Because I know they think that these kids are going to be on computers when they're adults, and that's their thought. But for one, I hate to be in charge of something like that where my child doesn't break it. And 2, I don't like my kids on endless screen time at home. Why would I want it at school? 3, how does that get changed? Because I think you said it, that being a local school board member has far greater effect on our local schools than, say, the state school board. Is that correct?
Let me ask this question.
This
Is it more cost effective for the schools to have a Chromebook versus buying textbooks?
Cost effective, that's a great question. I don't know. I know colleges have gone to ebooks. A lot of colleges have gone to ebooks, and back in my day, I was buying the paper book and buying and selling at college, growing up in high school, right? There's something magical about holding a book, about turning its pages, about wondering what's coming next. Screens don't necessarily offer that. Even reading on a screen,
it's not the same.
I have a more difficult time reading off of a screen than I do from actual paper, an actual book. So, a couple of things here. Yeah, absolutely. Screens are important. Here we are having a very important conversation online, right? So there's no question that we want our kids to be familiar with it. What the problem that I'm seeing is we're asking kids to replace things with it, right? And we're seeing sometimes kids, their babysitters are phones, and this is their source of entertainment all the time. It's not to go outside and play like we did. It's just a little bit, it's different now. So anyway, yeah, there's dangers in screens. One of the things that we can do at the state level. Now, we've talked about local control. I've talked about local control. There's online schooling, which obviously you're going to have some sort of interaction similar to this. But when you talk about how can the state help mitigate some of this or minimize some of this, then we can write it into our standards. We can say, hey, we actually want you to write, not type. We want you to write. We want you to read classical literature. And I hope that classical literature is being read from an actual book. And so, yeah, to push more of this pencil to paper is a huge push for me. I would love to see that. Recognizing that there's a time and a place for screens, and it's not all the time, which some districts have adopted. And I think, if I'm honest with you, I think that I've seen some districts go back, say, hey, we were a little hasty on this, but not all of them have. And I hope that they get back to where they respect the pencil to paper process.
Matt, you've mentioned more than once in the meetings that I've attended, you are adamant about local control, which to me, it rings very true. And we talk about this all the time. How you vote locally will far more affect your life than how you're voting on the state and national level every day of the week. But, you know, that word control, I feel like you could maybe describe exactly what your job is on the board, because I don't think, because I didn't understand until I started going down this with these candidates. I didn't understand exactly what a school board member's powers are and their responsibilities are, because I just learned that you don't write legislation. Your job is to enforce it. But please explain what you on the school board with 15 people total, right?
Yeah.
What it is that board is for. What do you do?
So we will write, we will take legislation, we will take law, and some of those laws, especially educational laws or education bills, you'll see that it will say the state board shall, and it'll say like make a rule, or you know what I mean, something along those lines. And so then what we have to do at the state level is we have to take that law and we have to make a rule that aligns with that law, so that districts or charters have the ability to understand, or not have the ability, but can understand and follow that process.
You make it digestible for the district.
Yes.
And you define things better, maybe, because laws can be.
Laws are oftentimes they're general.
Right.
So we'll put it into practice and say, here's what it will look like at the school level. Right. And then even on top of that, like some of our rules will say a school needs to have a policy on fees, right? And there's not a whole lot of flexibility, but each school then has their own policy. So we don't write direct policies for schools on all subjects. But what we can do is we can say, this is the rule, and your policy has to align with that rule, and it cannot break it, and the rule can never go against law.
And this definitions that you provide, they then go to the local school boards, correct? To implement within the districts.
Yes.
Okay. So your power essentially is to get from the legislature what their bill says, then to add to it in a way that defines that bill so that it's workable for schools and parents and teachers to understand. And then you implement it and then put it down to this local school boards, who then put it into the district. See, a lot of people sometimes think that the school board's up there writing curriculum, writing bills at the Capitol. Now, I know that a lot of you do spend time at the Capitol.
I thought you guys just did tweed try-ons and then went home, but
well, you were close, Jared. But
I know. I see you're not wearing tweed, and there's no leather elbows in sight.
I gave you a heads up. It wasn't happening.
I've noticed that legislation in 2024, for example, can you give us an idea of legislation that you think is, because here's what everyone's upset about. They're upset about pornography in schools. That's the big topic. Yes. And I believe that it was covered or discussed during session. And I know so many minds and so many different people and chefs are in that kitchen to build that. But that was a big one. The next one is teachers, as the fine line between teacher and ally, LGBT versus gender equality, the gender, what do they call it? When you identify as something, it's different than sexual, but it's
gender identity.
So these things all got discussed, right? This year, is there legislation that's come out that you think is positive that we can look forward to as parents?
Absolutely. I've noticed that there's this narrative out there that the state board hasn't done anything and that they don't want to change these things. For me, that is not true. Absolutely, I am eager to get pornography out of our schools. Not only eager to get pornography out, but determined not to let it in. And I think that's a huge part of this, is that we don't want to continue this battle. This is not an ongoing battle. It never should have been a battle in the first place, right? And so thank you to Representative Ivory, who worked so hard in the legislature and worked with so many others to make sure that I believe it's by July 1st, it's before the school year will begin, that stuff should be removed from our libraries.
And is that on a level of, how are they deciding? Because, someone mentioned it at a meeting last night. Books should maybe be rated like a movie theater rates books. So if a book is over 13 years old should read it, maybe they should be rated. Now, I don't necessarily want them in the library, but I'm the last person to say ban books, because some extraordinary books may have some mature content. But again, it's age appropriate. You get it in high school. You're not getting it in elementary school. And so I'm curious, with his bill, did it give some definitions of what pornography looks like?
So we're looking at, and there was a special standards and assessment meeting a couple days ago. I think on the 16th is today. I'm losing track of days here.
Yeah,
That would have been yesterday.
It was
I get it.
probably yesterday. And they're talking about what this is going to look like and how this is going to come through. So you're gonna see that at the next May board meeting on specifics with that. But it is coming. You talk about like a rating system. Here's the thing. If there is a rating system, if it's in an elementary library, a junior high, or a high school, right? And then for me, I don't think it's appropriate. I think a school library should be for school subjects.
Right. That's public libraries are for that, maybe.
Yeah, you want to go to a public library, you want to search the internet, that's between you and your child, or your child, or that child and the parent, right? That's not for the school to get involved and say, oh, your parent won't let you read this. Well, let me show you. Here's a book that I think you can connect with. That's not our role.
No, in fact, that's considered grooming according to the law. If you're going to show a child pornography, be a teacher being an ally or just regular teacher. And that's so cringe. I can't even imagine.
It's an interesting thought. I think to the most popular children books of all time, the Harry Potter numbers, they would have every 4 books had to change their rating because they got the books aged with the kids who read them. They got more detailed and more, it starts out kind of plushy toy, scary nightmare, and then it gets to, but what I would like to ask is, has there been a study into how these books got into school libraries?
I don't know if I have exact information for you, but from what I've heard, or from what I understand, and again, I could be wrong because I don't want to put anybody under a
nobody really knows. It just,
but there's some organizations that kind of just sent material to schools.
Kind of came in a packet
with good stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, here's a bundle of stuff.
So that could be just a publisher saying, I just want to get more of my books on the shelves, or that could have been insidious, it could have been anything. But yeah, that's a big question. I think
about these organizations. I know that the state school board works with a number of different organizations. And have you, as a board, audited these organizations to maybe see what their intentions are? Maybe what their social justice stuff is? I mean, has anyone really gone into these organizations to see exactly who we are trusting with our kids as far as curriculum?
We have individuals from the state, from the staff, and take that for however you will, that have to vet these. And then we've also put processes in place that say any books or any material that comes into your library, schools, you have to look at. You can't just accept the Trojan horse, right? So that's where the state can come in and say, no, here's a process that says you have to look at what you're putting into your libraries. And if it goes against the law, then don't do it. Don't try to put it behind the counter and say it's for special occasions. Just don't do it.
So would that be something that you'd put a librarian in charge, or maybe the administration, or where would the control point for that be?
Well, of course, the administrator is responsible for anything that happens in his school or her school. However, yes, most likely they'd put a librarian in charge, maybe a couple of people to have some processes in place for security.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would most likely be assigned.
So I have a comment offline that says Follett just sends books to school. And I'm not sure what Follett is. Is that an organization?
It could just be, I don't know if it's what organization it would be, or if it's a distributor or whatever. But these organizations, they're about making money.
Right.
So
of course. If I was a publisher and I could add something into a pack, I would do that.
Right. They just want to make money. So if they say, okay, I'm going to get a lot of money and I'm just going to push a bunch of materials to school. Yeah. Well, that's what happened. There was no process in place.
And how many
librarians to check?
How many principals and librarians would be like, hey, look, they're offering me to get 20 books for the price of 15. And so maybe one of those books is one that is unacceptable.
That are pushing an agenda.
A principal would, accept that.
It says they're a leading campus retail partner that offers academic programs, merchandise, and services for over 1,000 campuses nationwide. Now, this came from a very reliable source. They're a book vendor, and they aren't reviewed. They send databases that aren't reviewed too. I'd like to get into that, but I'm hoping that this young lady will get into the chat, because I would love to have these questions asked directly to Matt, because he's going to understand what I don't. But so you really like Ivory's bill, and you see potential there to where we can, what are some of the things? I mean, aside from rating these books, how are they polling books right now after when this bill kicks in?
So I had to, admittedly, I don't have the bill in front of me, and there were a lot of education bills that came through.
Right.
But I do know that this bill should has the direction of saying we're not tolerating it, we're not putting it in our schools, and I don't even know. I mean, you talk about a rating here. I don't know what that means, because the filth that that has been read to me, or that I have seen, it doesn't.
It would be an X rating.
Yeah, it's not for schools at all. I don't even know why it would be even considered. Right.
Well, I figured if you can't read that book aloud in a public meeting, how is it sitting in a library for kids?
It's a pretty obvious removal process at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're not. Why is this even debated?
Well, and so then you also have talked about Kira Birkeland. This is something that I really have noticed about you as a candidate, that you're not getting any limelight for yourself. Have you noticed this? You're obviously very humble, but you celebrate the legislators that are doing the work. You have mentioned in so many meetings that have been, sit down meetings with delegates, you're talking about the team, and you're talking about, I've seen you with parents. You're talking about we are a team as parents, as teachers and administration. So you talk about Kira Birkeland and her bill. So I would like to, we'll get to that comment next. I would like to know what you think about Kira Birkeland's bill, which was the bathrooms bill.
Okay. Yes. So I know I've said this before. I don't know why we would put the rights of others above somebody else's, right? So here I have. Oh my!
Is that your?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't
It's
know if it
okay.
was one of us, so
It'll-
it could
it'll-
be any of us.
You could try fighting to make your computer quiet, and that'll be a fight that'll take you 3 weeks. The show will be long
Hopefully
over.
I got it. And I'll be honest with you, somebody's wanting to play pickleball tomorrow night.
Oh my gosh.
So I might see,
Wow.
there might be some more coming. Anyway, we're talking about rights here. So again, this goes back to just because I check a box or I fit inside of a box, does that mean my rights are better than the rights of others? Sorry, that threw me off here.
What was
does mean
that?
my rights
That wasn't
override
us.
somebody else's rights? Absolutely not. So I 100% agree with Representative Birkeland that we need to protect the privacy of boys and girls in Utah's bathrooms and locker rooms. Sex designated privacy areas, right? While providing, and I have it right here, while providing flexibility for unique student situations without violating the privacy of others. That, again, I mentioned this, I can't remember when we were having a conversation. Oh, it was probably in a debate. That swimmer who has spoken out,
Yeah.
against, right? Just
Riley Gaines.
horrifying. And I don't see why that would be appropriate to say, oh, you identify as a female, well, go ahead, violate the rights and privacy of the other, students who go in there. Absolutely not appropriate. And so very appreciative of what she's done on here. And you talk about, I don't like to use the word I a lot because I'm one person. Even, and I recognize that the legislature has a job to do. And I support them in that. And sometimes I don't always agree, but I support them in that. And I always support them in that. And then even referring to the board, there are 15 board members.
Mm-hmm.
And if I stand alone, I get nothing done. And, I that doesn't mean to say that I don't fight for specific rights and conservative ideas. That doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that I have to work with others and I have to get to a point and convince, if you will, through discussion and sometimes even argument,
Right.
that what needs to happen is best for kids, that these, in my opinion, conservative ideas is what's best for kids. And we need to push for that. And again, I'm glad it's not just me. And I will always say we, because obviously we have great legislatures and great people who are pushing our legislators to do the right thing for our families.
Salt Lake County had just decided that with if you identify, you can go into locker room in the local city and county.
But it's the county properties like the county
YMCA
rec centers and
type
such.
stuff. But here's what I tell parents all the time. I mean, you can love trans kids just as much as you love other kids. It doesn't matter, but they're in danger. Both the little girls that are in a room with a male, just as much as a trans boy in a room with a bunch of boys. You have to protect women. And we've lost sight of that. And I don't know what world we're going to get rid of all for one, when there's obviously ways to assist that child who is going through whatever, and they get to change in a bathroom or a separate area, whatever, but it's keeping children safe. That's your job as an administrator.
Yeah.
And I hope it's the thought of the state school board. So I know that you mentioned Kira Birkeland and the locker rooms being the locker rooms being an
Let's just
issue.
say protected, right?
Yeah.
We need to
So
protect our locker rooms.
one of the comments, which I think you can see it, but I'll just read it. The state board will be revising the state math standards soon. I would like Matt to comment on his vision for the revision process and how he would like to improve the standards. Also, what are key things do our students need to know and do in mathematics that will help them be successful in their lives? I would also like to hear about the vision for improving reading and language arts for our kids.
Wonderful.
And That is a great question, Mary.
Wait, that's not a social subject. I mean, you'd think we were talking to an educator.
I'm sure we are talking to an educator, actually.
Well, I really do appreciate this question. I have been on the board for 4 years. We're wrapping up my 4th year here. I've been waiting for math standards. I started out as a math teacher, so
Right.
this is my passion.
And still no tweed.
Still no tweed. I'm sorry. I'll get one. We'll talk about that later.
No,
All
you
right.
won't. No, you won't.
I
Not on
gotta
my
work
watch.
this out.
You talk about my vision for the revision process and how I'd like to improve the standards. One, I would love to see our state come back and focus on arithmetic. I would love to get to a place where parents can actually help their children do math again. Do you remember those days? Because a lot of newer parents don't. Even my own child, I just told you, I taught math. I majored in math. I actually know a little bit about math, but I'm looking at my own children's book and I'm like, what are they wanting you to do? Right. And
yeah,
so
you have to literally YouTube how to do this Common Core math to figure out how to help your 7-year-old.
Is this the Common Core thing? I've always heard about it, where they use different processes to get to the end, and it's thrown all the parents off.
Yes, and it's been kind of adopted. I think Common Core was brought up. It's been about 15 years. And I don't even know if it's been we've written it out of a lot of our standards. That's why, again, I'm looking forward to this math standard. So if I address the last part of that, what do I want to see? I want to see foundational knowledge being taught to our K through 3 students. I'm tired of kids having to pull out a calculator in middle school for 3 divided by 3. And the answer is 1. Spoiler alert, it's 1. Anything divided by itself is 1, right? But kids are having to pull out a calculator for that. I'm going to share a
There's
frustrating
so many
story.
extra steps to come to an answer that you and I had to memorize in 3rd grade, our times tables. But now you have to go by hundreds or tens, and then you go above, then you have to subtract, and there's so many extra steps. Yeah. And I thought this was by design to separate kids from parents, because my dad would get frustrated with me doing math. I mean, we'd get really frustrated. I don't get it. Well, why don't you understand? Parents already have enough homework ilks, but when I have to go Google to figure out how to help my child because their answer matters and the answer was less important than the method. And I was like, don't you want them to have the right answer?
Right.
And memorization is how we did it.
It should be an instant recall. If I ask you what 7 times 6 is, it should be an instant 42. It should not be a plug it into my calculator. But we're not getting that. We're seeing kids draw a chart or a graph on the board of their paper to figure out double-digit multiplication, where it's like, no, there's such a simpler way. And if you don't have your foundation, then you're going to struggle for the rest of your educational existence, right?
Any job you have that deals with money, you'll struggle giving change back.
Well, and I would argue that if you don't have foundational knowledge in anything, you're going to struggle, right? Not just math, but so anyway, that's what I want to get to with math. Is I want to see in our early phases is I want to see more of a grammar stage, teach the kids what it means, and then we can break it apart, right? If I know that 2 + 3 is 5, and now I'm talking low level, if I know that it's 5, then I can say, I can look at it differently. But if I spend 20 minutes figuring out that 2 items here and 3 items here make 5, and then I saw a curriculum where they wanted you to discuss it with 1st graders or 2nd graders for about 20 minutes, that's a waste of time. It's a huge waste of time, in my opinion. So
I agree.
We need to get back to this stuff where we're teaching kids, and part of teaching is sometimes we tell them and they regurgitate. And sometimes people have referred to it as drill and kill. Well, if you want them to make logical decisions, they have to have a strong foundation of grammar. And we're going to see the same thing in reading. Reading is key to everything. And that was another comment, talking about the reading. What are we doing? We have at the state level, and we want to keep this going. I want to keep this going. Is we have pushed the science of reading, so that all these teachers are trained in the science of reading. We have to understand that if you cannot read, it will dictate the rest of your life.
It's true.
And so this is crucial. And I would dare say, again, as a math major, I would dare say that reading is the top priority that education should focus on.
You know,
Oh yeah,
Matt,
communication.
Prager Institute put out a small video once that really, really resonated with me. And it was about young boys growing up in elementary to junior high to high school. And that young boys, they struggle. There's a lot that don't know how to read or read to their level. And I'm putting girls out just for a second, because girls too, but boys especially. And they get to grades where now they get to do creative writing. And a boy will write a paper about, well, a girl will write her paper about a story that has a beginning, and then there's a lot of mushy love and feels and all of that in the end. And a boy will write a paper and it'll include robots and explosions and invasions, and he'll get a lower grade. And yet he did the assignment, but teachers are looking for something more. And these boys, rather than, okay, I'll fix it if it's not what you're looking for, but I did the assignment, and a parent standing there going, what is the problem? This is what you asked for. Right. Boys tend to shut down, and yet their brains think differently. That's magic to them, the explosions and robots. And I feel like we're not teaching these kids and grading them based on, what they really know. How was your punctuation? Did you make complete sentences? Did you have a start, of middle, and an end? It's more about, well, it's not as good as hers. And then when boys fall behind, they're less likely to go to college or graduate, and that affects their whole life. And I think that we have to figure out a way to teach both boys and girls, but Absolutely. To also in our school, I mean, our kids every year they're in their grade, but my child had accelerated so much in spelling and vocabulary. He was going to the junior high when he was in 4th grade for those classes, because you were teaching at his level. And he passed his civics test this week, or last couple of weeks ago. Now you won't have to take it in high school. Why are more schools not following the type of successes that you found personally in the school you're a principal of? Because I know not all charters do what you do.
Well, one of the things that we do at our school is there's a philosophy that I go by. And it's, if the kid doesn't know it, you haven't taught it. Or if the child doesn't do it, you haven't taught it well enough, right? And so we don't blame the child for not knowing. We don't just assume that because they're not doing it, that they're dumb, or that they can't do it, or that they don't want to do it, right? We look inward. And I don't know if, I don't want to put other schools down, because I don't know what their capacity is, and I don't know what they are doing. But it's my firm belief that if you want a child to do something, set an expectation, help them understand that they can reach that expectation, and then teach them how to do it. So you talk about these differences in boys and girls. Well, if you're getting papers like that as a teacher, for me, I'm looking inward and saying, okay, I wasn't clear on my expectation. I wasn't clear on what the assignment was about. And so I need to not punish the student, but reinforce, like, okay, make sure, whether it's in that moment or the next time, and a teacher just ages like good cheese, right? So you've got to make sure that you get better over time, is what I'm saying. I don't drink wine, or else I would have used that analogy. But anyway, I would hope that as an educator, that they would say, okay, how do I do this better? because kids are kids. You know, you talked about earlier, like what kind of kids are going into which kind of schools. I believe the input is pretty much the same everywhere. It's not exactly the same, but the input is pretty much the same. It's the output. Because of my ideals and my philosophies, it's the output that you're going to see kids rise and meet those expectations. It's because we've taught critical thinking skills. We haven't pushed an agenda. We don't want to push agendas. We want them to think for themselves. We want them to have self-governance. When a student does something inappropriate, I sat down with one today and I said, do you really think that was the appropriate response? And the answer was no. Now that was my choice to have the conversation was more than that, but is it to have a conversation and teach a child, or just say, you know what, you are a problem. I am getting rid of you. You know, what does that do for our kids? Nothing good anyway.
What you're actually doing, and I don't know if people realize it, but just my years at Franklin Quest in my old days, by setting a goal with a child, an expectation with a child, then teaching them, then celebrating when they meet that goal, that is how they get self-esteem.
Yes.
And that's what children are lacking. And you can't give self-esteem to a child, but you sure can give them ways to find it within themselves by accomplishing goals that they set for themselves.
Absolutely. The only thing that a student can do for themselves is effort, right? They could be smart or not as smart, let's say. But if they put in the effort, you're going to see rewards come through, right? And you talk about self-esteem. This to me is the greatest SEL program. We talk about SEL being a hot topic, and I don't mean to change this subject here.
What is SEL for everyone?
This is social emotional learning.
Okay.
And what has happened is this has become this thing where academics has been placed aside, and we're going to spend hours during the day talking about how it reminds me of that old SNL skit where I think it's Patrick looks in the mirror and says, "You're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you." Well,
is the SEL just to kind of socialize everyone first and then educate them second? Is that what it's about?
It's about a lot of these programs are about educating students to change their views in order to accept another's views.
Oh, so right. What would you call that?
I'd call that communist Russia.
Yeah, the Red Guard training camp.
The greatest thing that I can see for an individuals, if you want to talk about what actual social and emotional learning is, and social and emotional development, in my opinion, is finding success in academics. You want a student who is self-confident. You teach them how to read and do math.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, as a math teacher, everybody says, "Man, you must be smart." Well, no, I'm pretty good at math. That doesn't mean I'm smart. But that's the thing. If you can succeed in academics, not only are you going to feel confident, but people are going to be confident about you.
Mm.
It's true. And at the very youngest level, my child used to be, my son and daughter, totally different kids, totally. My son would do all of his assignments, never turn them in. My daughter would feel terrible if she missed one assignment. On top of it. Boys and girls are different. But it took, I think, a teacher at your school, and I'll call her out, Mrs. Larson, sat down with him and just explained to him, like, you're not getting credit. You're doing all this work for nothing. And if you see it through to the end and you stay on the path, you're going to see that reflect. And it was like, I say that all day. He doesn't listen. She sits down at his level and explains it to him. And it was like, oh, okay. And then, holy cow, all the assignments are getting turned in. Now, we still have some, but I think that goes with your life. These are life skills you're teaching. If you see something to its end that you're committed to, you will find success in it. Another comment from Mary that she'd added is she would like you to remind listeners that there are not federal standards are developed by the board. I'm kind of confused there, Mary. there are not federal standards are developed by the board.
I
So
think she's
she's
trying to
saying
say
the board,
that
you
our
don't develop
standards-
the federal standards.
The standards are developed by the board, by the state board, and that's what we're looking at. Like I said, when we talk about these math standards, they're not federal, but the state board gets together and says, okay, this is what we want our kids to learn. This is what we want them to know by the end of first grade. Now, we don't dictate how, again, with the curriculum, and I can't go into every teacher's classroom and say, no, this is how you're going to do it. But we can say they need to know how to do this. They need to know their multiplication up to a certain point by the time they leave this grade level. And hopefully we can put them in a way, and hopefully they can be put in a way where there's no time for this nonsense that we talked about earlier. There's no time for drawing a diagram out to find this. There's no time for discussions, because we're teaching kids how to do math, arithmetic specifically in those lower grades, and then again use that foundational knowledge to gain access to make logical connections.
When you're not talking about ideas and ideologies, you're talking about numbers. Nothing's more concrete than numbers.
I don't know. They're arguing that right now.
Aside from some are called racist. Just the social justice stuff is a nightmare.
I believe that we teach math as math, right? I don't need to get into some weird left field. We teach math as math. And
so you have a standard, and the different schools and districts, depending on their whether it's their economic makeup or demographics, can adjust inside of there as long as they meet the standard.
They have to hit every standard. So it's not like it's a standard as like you have to hit this bar, right? There's a list of standards that say, again, your students need to know how to, by the end of grade 1, know how to add double digits.
Okay.
Right?
So what if they don't meet that standard?
Then the students suffer. Now, I don't know if we'll see. So that's a good question. And I don't know if I'm trying to think of how the state board staff polices that, because that's not something that has been brought to us from my knowledge. But what we do see is we see schools fall behind, and then they get put in this status of like a turnaround school or something where where they'll need to get additional supports in order to meet the requirements.
I've got a question. Over the last 20 years, male graduation has fallen and male attending college has plummeted. And at first they thought, 10 years ago, they thought, oh, we're just meeting equilibrium. But that has proven to been incorrect, where I think now it's what is it, 55-45, or even in a lot of cases 60-40 to females attending college to males. And it kind of concerns me that men are dropping out of society, because I don't know if you guys know this, but when boys drop out of society, society gets real sketchy.
Thank you for that.
It does. It gets, that's when you see violence. That's when you see
Poverty,
rebellions and civil wars. And so I don't know, is there any momentum on that, or is that a concern that's on not just you guys, but is that a concern on the education system nationally? Because we're not hearing it.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, is it?
That's exactly what PragerU was putting their video out to kind of explain, that if we don't focus on boys learning these key fundamental subjects, that's one of the reasons is they're getting by through public school.
It seems
and
like
then they drop off because they don't know how to read.
It seems like they're moving away from it. They're eliminating recess in school, which burns energy off of boys when boys need to burn energy off. And so it seems like we're failing young men.
So I'm actually, I'm glad you brought this up. It has been a concern of the board. And before I get into that, you know, we saw this push, and we've seen it with multiple things as well. Not only gender, but we saw it with race and ethnicity, and with, like I said, demographics. And there's this push to just get this one group, like, oh, if we could just push this one group. Well, what happens when you just focus on one group? Exactly what we're seeing here. I don't have a problem. Of course, I'm ecstatic that more girls who have grown into womanhood, right, have taken on these additional opportunities. I love it. I'm all for it. But we can't neglect the other people in our society while doing it, right?
Yes.
And so at the state level, we as board members, actually in our audit committee, we talked about, or maybe it wasn't audit, it was in one of the meetings, we talked about having research done to find out what's happening to our young men, because there needs to be an even balance.
Yes.
You know, and I agree that when we had X amount of males doing this and females down here, yeah, let's see what we can do to bring them up. But what happened is we ignore the males and then bring up the females, and now we're like this. It's the same thing, right? And so now we have to bring it back. So we're trying to find out, to your point, Jared, we're trying to find out what happened to our young men. Why have we not supported them the way that they needed support, along with our young women, so that we can have a good, balanced society? And I think we missed the mark on that as a society, as many organizations have started these different programs specifically for different organizations. We've left out the white male.
Well, right? The white male's the bottom rung. I mean, they may as well be mascot poop under the totem pole.
I'm curious,
though. This push that we were inherently racist, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I looked one time at a list of scholarships, and like literally thousands of scholarships, and I think like 4 of them could apply to white males.
But they also included all the others.
But they included all the others, but white males.
Tell me, Matt, because it seems like over the years we've gotten rid of shop and home ec or mechanics. I mean, I know a lot of boys in my high school were always out in the shop, out in the mechanic shop, and they loved it, and they actually grew a love of building things. And I feel like a lot of classes, are those classes just left public education?
No,
because
go ahead, sorry.
I took home ec and I learned the basics of cooking, and I had a great time, and I took sewing, and then I took shop, and I have all my fingers. Hi, Mom. But what I'm wondering is, I know money was an issue, and they were starting to get rid of those extracurriculars, they called them. But in the meantime, those were ways that really spoke to boys sometimes, and girls, and enhanced their love of school, or maybe taught them a trade while they were still young. And maybe they went to trade school instead of college. But we're seeing that even trade schools could use more.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I took home ec. I learned how to sew and cook, and I remember sitting in an 8th grade class thinking this wasn't for me, but I did it, and I was very appreciative. It comes in handy later in life, right? Even in 8th grade. In high school,
all the girls are in that class with you, so you're no dummy.
In high school, I took some metal shop and some woodworking, and you know what I mean? Auto mechanics. These are great programs, and they really do give students, males and females, the opportunity to see, hey, I like this or I don't like this. CTE, which has all these programs that we're talking about, career and technical education. The program has continued to grow, so they're still out there, but we would always like to see more. And we do see a lot of these males fall into these categories in the trades, and that's not a bad thing. And one of the things that I really appreciate about expanding these is it gives the student an opportunity to find out what they like, right? And you guys know this. It's like, well, we have more males in I don't know, construction than females, so we need to fix that. Really? Because I know more males who like construction more than females. So that's natural, right?
You want a mutiny, go kidnap women and make them go into construction in October, November,
or work in sewers,
February.
Or there's just ideals that women prefer different jobs than others. That's not all women, but I mean, that's common sense. You're going to find more women. I know we don't have a lot of time. Are you getting signatures, or are you going caucus convention?
I am all in the hands of the delegates. So
I love that.
They are going to decide in a week and a half. It's all in their hands. So
excellent. Well, and
it's a week and a half, or is it this Friday?
No, he gets elected at state.
Oh yeah, you're at state.
Yeah.
So state delegates, if you haven't had a chance to meet Matt, and you want to leave a comment for him, do it right now where he can answer it. Or Matt, how do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you before convention? Are you going to be at our county convention Friday night?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love to talk to as many people who are willing, and just let's get some conversation going. Let me answer some questions. I know, if I'm honest with you, there's been some false narrative out there, and I want to clear it up. So I've been reaching out to individuals, and I want to make sure that you understand that I'm here for you. I'm here to do the work. I have conservative ideals, and we want to make sure that we keep Utah. So,
and what are you packing here? 5 kids?
I've got 5 kids. Yes, sir.
I like it. A very handsome family, good-looking kids. I have one more question, kind of to follow up on this males getting left behind thing. Because, granted, I'm sure there's things that schools and the primary education can do to help this out, but colleges tend to also have a problem with this. Is the school board, do they have anything to do with the higher education at all, or is that something totally different?
So there is a higher board of education. So we don't get a mess with that. I'm sure there's committees and individuals who work with them and give them ideas, but we don't make policy for the higher ed or anything of that nature.
It would kind of be nice if you did. With this legislation that has just come out regarding HB 261, you mentioned that, and that is no longer going to be permitted in schools, which, for people that don't know, that's the policy programs on initiatives like anti-racism, bias, critical race theory, implicit bias, intersectionality, racial privilege. I can't believe that we have to actually address this, but it definitely needs addressing, because a lot of people are a lot worried about CRT in schools, and that's just come up over the last few years. Children are taught to hate themselves for the color of their skin, something they have no control over whatsoever. And, when I ask, what are some of I think I asked you, what are the positive bills that have come out? I go to your flyer and you mentioned all of them.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed, because, I appreciate who has time to babysit and know everything about the legislator, aside from my friend Nicolene Peck, who is up there all the time for fun. She is just a wealth of knowledge. And one question I asked another candidate was, who on the board, and you don't have to give exact names, but who on the board do you see as people you can work with, that you've found you've been able to work with? You can give me numbers, like
you know what? I have found that I can work with most of them. I'd say easy 10. Easy 10.
Excellent.
And there's a reason for that though. And the reason is as it was kind of maybe alluded to, that I work with people. I listen to people, right? I listen to my parents when they come in and say, I have a concern. That doesn't mean I change everything at the drop of a hat, but it gives me perspective. And it gives me an idea of where people are seeing things and how we can improve it. And that's what this is about. This is improving. And so when I have at least 10 other board members who are willing to not only listen, but share and work with and say, you know what, you're right. We can make this happen. Then that's huge. We can get a lot of work done when we work with each other. And again, that doesn't mean we have to compromise principles.
Right.
Sometimes we have to wordsmith things, right? And make it sound correct and make sure that everything's in there. And so we do that, and it takes time. And if I'm honest, again, you don't hear me a whole lot at the board meetings. I don't speak a whole lot. It's because I've done the work behind the scenes. By the time that gets to the table, discovery is gone. There's no time for that. You guys have seen these 15-hour board.
That is a great point. Please elaborate, because I think people see these school board meetings, they're exhausted by them. Some of us, I mean, I would like you to, if you are elected, I would like to make these school board meetings maybe more often and in the evening so parents can attend. But elaborate on that, because you see the fighting, and I don't know if it's fighting for the show, because the ones who aren't fighting are the ones, like you said, you've already done the discovery prior to even having the vote. So you don't need to discuss it. You've gone over it with your fellow board. So explain that a little.
Yeah. First off, if education is huge, this is not a game that we're playing with your kids. So if you're not prepared by the time board meeting gets there, you've missed the mark. Let's just say that, right?
That's fair.
Because these decisions are big enough where I'm not making a decision from even a 1 or 2 hour conversation. Now there's times where you have to look and say, okay, I've done the work. There's always changes. You guys have seen the board meetings. There's always changes coming through, and you have to analyze in the moment and say, okay, does this undo the main purpose of this rule, or does this add to a little bit? But if it completely changes it, then you might have to hesitate and say, I don't have enough information. This is too important for me to just pull the trigger right now. So yes, when I talk about doing the work behind the scenes, that means I'm talking to people in the field, constituents, families. That means I'm talking to other board members saying, what are you seeing in your area? Because I represent Tooele, parts of West Valley, parts of Utah County, right, or parts of Salt Lake County, which includes West Valley and Magna. Anyway, so I represent a lot of people, and I want to make sure, one, that we still practice local control. So that's what I look at when I look at these rules coming through, is do I really want to try to make Tooele County like Salt Lake County? Do I want to make Tooele School District like Salt Lake City School District? Absolutely not. So I've got to make sure that Tooele local control, which we talked about a little bit earlier, is always an option, so that I don't force a district to do what another district does just because. But I am willing, and I do work with others and make sure that when I get to that table at the board meeting, that I'm ready to go, and that we have good conservative rules and amendments to come out and take place.
That's
Everyone,
right to the point there.
yeah, his website is votehymas.com. That's VOTEHYMAS.com. Go there and check it out. It's a great conversation. I remember it was a great conversation when I talked to you 4 years ago too, though.
In fact, 4 years ago, I was blowing up the comments. I don't know if you remember, but it's one of the first times I had seen your show, and I was just blowing up the comments.
And I mean, you have her kids, and you also have a niece and nephew of mine. Although my niece might be in the elementary side.
I cover both schools.
Okay, so you have both of them. They're doing well there.
Do you see do you see a difference in your teachers and your staff, according to like other schools? Because I mean, I can remember great teachers and I can remember terrible teachers growing up, but the great teachers were the ones that really got to me and inspired me into debate, into political science, I mean, into communications, literature. Do you see that? I know you just did an award assembly for your teachers, for some of your teachers. How, and I'm sure you see, well, I don't know. Do you see a difference in your teachers? And if you do, what is it you do to really let the good teachers shine?
Well, we let them teach, right? Teachers are
That's
passionate. They're
brilliant.
passionate about what they do. And so we let them teach and we give them the tools to do so. So we have a greater administrative support and a stronger discipline policy. That, again, I mentioned at the very beginning how we recognize that parents are a part of this education. So if a student is struggling, that's not a school problem. That's a family problem. And how can we support you, right? And that takes a lot of pressure off the teacher, not to say, well, now I don't have to do it, because that's not it at all, but to have that additional support. So when we say we want students to read 20 minutes a night, that doesn't mean I want them to text 20 minutes a night, right? And read that. I want them to open a book for 20 minutes a night. Imagine the relief for teachers when a student can actually read because parents have been making and having their kids read for 20 minutes. When a teacher feels not only empowered in their own classroom, and I tell them, if a student is taking away from the other 27 or 28 students, then let administration step in and help, right? So when a teacher has that autonomy to say, you know what, I can't focus on this student for 10 minutes while everybody else runs free. I need to disengage and get the help. That helps teachers. And then we at our school, we try to make sure that education is uniform, meaning you're going to be taught the same thing in every teacher's class if you're in that grade, unless you're in, we talked about leveled learning, your son being great at math. And so we put him in a math class that's challenging for him based on his ability, not based on his grade level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are helpful to teachers, where they're not trying to, at the local junior high, I get all 7th graders in Math 7. So I have people who are up here and people who are down here. And that is so stressful for a teacher.
Yeah.
And so we try to alleviate those things. We try to give extra help. And I'd love to see this throughout the state, by the way. I don't change philosophies from what I do in my career to what I do on the state, but really empowering our teachers to stay happy and stay passionate about what they teach, and your kids benefit from that. And like you said, we had an assembly the other day where we recognized some of our teachers who had been here for a long time, and it was just a great assembly.
I like that as a state school board, you allow the districts to kind of design their curriculum, and you just give them standards, because that way you have that petri dishes of ideas, and you get to find excellent, and other schools can copy or negate what they witness. I like that.
But that's something that I wish more schools would. I mean, when you see these different districts, some are doing great things and some aren't. And I mean, of course, I already said I would love to have people out there championing for charters, because I don't know, it's a different feel. I want every kid to be able to go there to a charter school if that's what they want. But I realize that the districts are all people have sometimes is public school. And I went to public school and I turned out okay. But I think that stop laughing. Why are you laughing? I think that once we've learned what's working and working well in a school, what's bothering me is the molasses style of, well, why don't we do that? Instead, we're just letting some districts burn and just, I wish that there was a way to get the greatest of, from all the schools, put it together, and the whole state and legislator says, this works, let's do it this way. And, let's get some of these organizations out that are questionable, that are providing curriculum, or Planned Parenthood was part of sex ed in our state for a long time. And, and parents are too busy to get into it and know it. I think going to a charter does require a parent actually being engaged. I mean, if it's not volunteers or donations, it is 20 minutes a night with your kid reading out loud, and you're timing them, and then you're asking them questions to make sure they understood what they read. But my kids were speed readers. They were speed readers by first grade. And Miss Green, big thank you to her, because she taught my son a love of learning that I tried, but it was Miss Green. And this is where I'm getting, if we know what works, we need legislators to start implementing it statewide. If that's who's supposed to do it, who's supposed to do that?
Like I said, we write standards. We can't dictate what they teach and, local control. But to your point, this is common sense. Why wouldn't every teacher demand that their students are reading 20 minutes a night? I hope that they are, right? Why wouldn't you? That's just best practices. And so I would hope that there are those schools out there who are saying, you know what, we're failing our kids and we're failing our families. We need to demand more, because kids can do it, and the kids will do it. And like you said, I mean, you gave credit to Mrs. Green. Wonderful. But imagine what would happen if you weren't supportive, if you didn't say, don't worry about that.
Oh, right? Who knows what?
So it takes effort on parents, and sometimes I've been on top of my game, and sometimes things in life happen that I've been on the bottom of my game, right? But it really does take all of us. And that's what I'm saying. When we get parents involved, whether at the school level or at the state level, amazing things happen.
Well, and I hope you'd push that, because, I know you push that. You're highly engaged, and the parents tend to be in the school that I'm familiar with. But I know so many parents out there that are probably listening that feel powerless and hopeless right now, because they've gone to homeschooling, and they're probably doing great with homeschooling. I know you support homeschooling as well.
I do.
But I feel like we have a gun to our head. Our children have to go to public school unless we find alternatives. And I think a lot of parents are just exhausted because they don't know what's going on, what's happening right now with these furries, and what's happening in their girls' sports. I mean, all of this just feels insane, and we feel helpless. And that's why you see so many parents turn up to school board meetings, losing their minds. And
I would like to just talk about furries for an hour. It's kind of a super novelty. Like, is it a cultural thing? Is it just to fit in? Like, when I was in school, people listened to the early stages of goth started showing up, It was before black fingernails, but they wore all black.
They were called mods in my school.
Yeah, whatever. Is it just that situation, or is there a kind of a cultural mental disorder appearing in front of us?
You're seeing it in media. You're seeing it on Netflix, on Disney shows. You're watching it. Cultural shift.
I don't watch a lot of TV, but I just do. I want to close out with one last question.
There's still one more thing we need to get into really fast.
But are you guys, does the school board look around at other states and meet with other states and kind of see what's going on in other states and get a feel for, are they doing some severe successes that we can adopt here? Is that something that happens as well, and swap stories?
It is. Actually, I serve... part of my responsibilities on the board is to be part of the governing affairs committee of the National Association for State Boards of Education.
That
Wow.
you dug deep into
Are you
the
appointed for that or
into the
elected by your peers? How do you get
bag
that?
of
So
bureaucracy there. That's at the bottom of the bag.
No, that's a great
Oh no, it
honor
is. It
because
is.
he
It
gets
is.
to-
But it's at the bottom of
How
the
do you
bag.
get that?
So I was I first off, they there's a like a list of things that say, hey, what are you interested in, and then you're appointed according to that list. And I thought, governing affairs committee, I would love to be a part of that, to hear what, just like you said, what are other states doing? Are we on point? Are we better, or are we struggling? And in fact, in July, I've been invited to go speak on some things that Utah is doing in regards to math. And so I'm going to go to DC in July. So yeah, I've been a part of that. We discuss with states like Hawaii, Indiana, even we hear about what New York is doing, and I think, man, I'm glad we're not New York. California, it's just there's some scary stuff out there.
A whole different set of pressures in those two states.
Nicolene Peck brought something up regarding data.
I think she's talking about
and that's something that's happening
the difference
within
in
our schools.
graduations.
Within our schools, when teachers will send home or they won't send it home. We've heard about this where the teachers have given, questionnaires to kids, or the kids' data is getting shared at a very young age and compiled. And I want to know, sometimes the data is skewed on this, so we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions. And I think she's talking about male, female, but a child's identity and data. What is the school district doing to protect that? Before they're of age. When some of the curriculum that I heard about with Bill Gates and stuff they were trying to design with Common Core to try to steer kids in certain directions of fields and career paths. And a lot of data gets brought home. I'm wondering, is our state doing anything to protect our kids' information, their data, where it stays in school, or does it go statewide? Does it go nationwide?
So you're exactly right. There is data everywhere. And
it's the hottest commodity right now.
Right. And so I'm gonna start let's start on the district level. So for my district, and I can't speak to others, but for my district where I am, is we don't share that with anybody. And we just don't. But we're not a large district. Now, if let's say that Tooele County School District, let's say that they had data and they had a third party come in, then they have to contract and say, okay, this is what this agreement looks like. And then they have to make that decision. But there's always something, this comes from the state, there's always something that says for a parent to say, do not share my data, right? And that should be honored. There's always something in there. And sometimes, hopefully it's never hidden. Hopefully it's as exposed as it can be. Because if a parent doesn't want their data shared, then a parent shouldn't have their data shared. And when I say their, I mean their student and theirs, right? Their entire family.
Well, yeah, the parent is still financially liable for the student. So
technically it's theirs. Career or their whole future could be ruined by data being shared. I mean, you look what happened to Kavanaugh and an accusation made against him when he was 18 years old. And here he is 60 years old and there's no proof of anything, but he gets wrung through the mud for a month and his whole reputation obliterated because we live in a cancel culture. Right. And if your kid has a fight in 6th grade or, just information about them that goes out there on the web, very sensitive information. I just hope that our schools are being a front line to protect us because it's hard enough with digital everything, right?
Agreed. And let me just, because I serve as chair of the Law and Licensing Committee. And, 2 years ago, I took this over from Carol Lear. And we have seen some great things happen since then. We've seen some really, I would say, really conservative rules that have come through law and licensing that have been protections for the students. But I want to bring up, because you brought up data. Whenever something comes in through law and licensing, regarding data and data privacy, I always get emails saying, do not share any data. And I agree with this. I also agree that it is the parents' data. And so if they choose to share, that's their prerogative. So this goes to one of those things where we all, the old saying, we all like local control until we don't, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You want me to make the decision for you, or do you want to make the decision for you? And for me, it's you want to make the decision for you. So I'll usually say, I'll look through the contract. I'll say, where is it that the parent gets to dictate whether or not they want to share it? And if it's in there, then I'll say, okay, I support you. But if it's not, if it's hidden, then we don't do it.
Matt, again, you could have led with the fact that you're on that committee too. I mean, these are really important. See what I mean? He doesn't talk about himself.
Busy guy.
I
Nicolene
love
says,
to work. I love to work. Anyway,
yeah, we can tell. Nicolene says multiple bills have been passed to help protect data, but we keep working on the problem. I so wish that we could get the Department of Justice out of Davis school districts. They store data forever.
Frightening.
Hasn't that gone on forever? I feel like that has just been going on for
What was it? Was it a bullying situation that brought him in? I'm digging into my memory hole here.
Yes.
And so they came in because they felt that the school district wasn't managing bullying well. So the DOJ came in to run it.
And
let me just ask you this, because we got Tony on and we got to cut you loose. Well, let me just ask you this. How has the Department of Justice done on educating? They've
not done anything.
Well, I'm just wondering, are the schools there in the Davis school district, are they performing to standard?
They are performing to standard as far as I know. I'd have to look more at the details, but I haven't seen any concerns come through the state that says, hey, Davis is struggling with standards.
Okay.
Obviously it was on this incident with bullying, targeted around racism. And so that's where the DOJ got involved. I don't know how long an investigation like this takes, right?
The kids are well past graduated by now.
You think? I thought this happened just a few years ago.
Hasn't it been like 3 years now?
I don't know if it's been that long, but it's been a while.
So Nicolene says that someone committed suicide and the mother sued the school and the DOJ was part of the suit. I hope a couple things before we go. I know you've already committed to doing town halls and after you're elected. I know that was a question with many delegates, is how approachable you will be. And I can say that you've always been approachable to parents.
Well, he has the thing at his school that we went to a couple months back where the other guy wore tweed. I just throwing that out there.
Well, there are some nerds that are still show it.
Dude, you're a math teacher. Don't they issue that? Doesn't it? They hand it with the diploma.
They're
like
higher ed. I think
like the green jacket in golf. They help you put it on. Yeah,
there it is.
You've committed to meeting with people with people in the district as often as maybe you'd like or they'd like, which is amazing. And I know that you have committed to working with legislators and to getting good policy and also working with the other board members. And you've said that you've committed to making sure that that we are up to standard and that we are not lowering standards in order to get kids past. We want to give them that goal and watch them achieve it and give those teachers more freedom to teach and to teach their way, but also getting rid of all the DEI stuff and all of that coming down from the legislature. So I know that you've also agreed to, what you're already doing, which is basically getting stuff done. And is there anything that you want to, and you've committed to, well, you are a conservative in your own life and you live by that, but you also commit to preserving parents' rights and maintaining parent control. And you believe in local government as local as possible.
And you've also given our community 5 children to raise up and lead us in the future. That is a
Yeah,
I-
you're
that
helping
is a
with the
good
birth
thing.
rate struggle. So good for you.
I think
on
making
that.
children is a good thing. It's a positive.
All this stuff is such good information, and I'm sorry we're having to cut you loose, but is there anything you'd like to leave us with? And people, he's not getting signatures, so if you're a state delegate and you really like him, call Matt. We've shared the website here in the show notes, and get in touch with him. Reach out to him if you have questions. We highly encourage you to donate or, volunteer. He will be at state convention next Saturday, and he will be at our convention. Get with me, Matt, about reserving your booth space, because I don't think we've actually talked about that yet.
Okay.
But we've invited all the state delegates to come to Friday night's convention so they can get in front of you if they haven't yet, and all of the candidates that are running in the state race. Anything you'd like to leave us with?
You left me with a great thank you for sharing those things that not only I've committed to do, but that I've been doing as well. This is a large effort here. It's a heavy lift, and it takes all of us to do it. And I just appreciate you, Holly, and you, Jared, for taking the time to have me on here. This is not only my career education, and so yeah, I want to see it done right. But also my kids have to go through this. My soon-to-be grandkids are going to have to go through this, right? This is part of my community. So we want to make sure this is done right. And so this is why I want to be a part of this, to make sure not only do we uphold Utah values, but conservative values as well, and make sure that our kids have a bright future. Frankly, so they can take care of me when I'm at retirement age, right? I mean,
Well said.
If we do our jobs right.
Well said, everyone. That's www.votehymas.com. That's HYMAS.com. Everyone check him out. Thank you again, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
And hold on just a second. Tony's coming right up, and we'll bring him on. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good night.
Yep.